Hi there, welcome to episode 12 of our Sew Along, and this is the last episode you're going to be putting your whole quilt together. So I'm so excited for you. This is really fun to do. You've got all the elements made, and now we're going to just put them together. So to start with, you've got a panel, and your panel comes from selvage to selvage with the two separate blocks. So go ahead and just cut them apart in the center. It doesn't have to be on any one particular line, just cut them apart. And then let me show you what we do next. You've got your separated blocks, and each of them will have this extra little detail on the sides. So go ahead and cut that off on this outside line. So there's two small lines. One has a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And so on that outside line there, go ahead and cut this extra little detail off, this extra little small blocks. And you can use this for a label on the back of your quilt. And go ahead and cut it off on both of those. I can show you on this one, I've got just the detail on the one side. Go ahead and cut that off. Now, your blocks, your panel blocks need to be finished at 20 inches by 20 inches. And these panel blocks, there was a mistake in the printing. So they didn't come out the right size. So we're going to have to add a little bit on the top and the bottom of each block. So it tells you right on page 12 of our pattern to cut your panel blocks apart, making each block 20.5 inches by 19.5 inches tall. If I'm to measure my block itself, it's 19.5 to the first line. And that's where you want to cut it, because we're going to add a little strip of extra fabric. You can see in the panel block that there's a subtle print of the queen bee print, which is white on white print that is in your fat quarter bundle. This is the only piece in the fat quarter bundle that we haven't cut up yet. So you're going to take this piece from your fat quarter bundle, and using the long edge, okay, because it's going to be 20 inches wide this way and 18 inches wide this way. If you have not cut your white on white piece yet, go ahead and cut two strips that are 2 inches by 20.5 inches. So your fat quarter should be plenty. This fat quarter happens to be 22 inches, so you've got plenty there. Cut 2 inches by 20.5 inches, and you'll sew those strips, one to the top edge of your block and one to the bottom edge of the block, so that it centers the pattern of the block. You can see on the quilt here, it's hardly noticeable, but I've got a little narrow strip here, because once the seam allowances are taken out, then there's not much left. And I've got a little strip on the top and on the bottom of each of these panel blocks. And that's so that we can get them to the right size, because they weren't printed quite big enough. Now you could just cut the panel bigger, but it's got those lines in the way and it doesn't have the printed background. So I chose to use the white on white to just fix that up. So a 2-inch strip by a 20.5 inch strip. And when you've got those sewn on, then trim your whole block to 20.5 by 20.5. So it's a nice square block. You'll end up with cutting off a little bit of that extra strip that you sewed on. All right, then we've got our blocks ready. And the next thing you need to prepare is all of your cute little star blocks. Now these need some sashing on them. Each one of these blocks has a piece of sashing on this between them. So I've chosen to have you sew sashing on the right side. Well, actually, these blocks don't have an up and a down, so it doesn't matter. So one side of each block. But it's a good idea to lay out your blocks first, maybe on a design wall or down on the floor. Lay them out so that you've got a nice arrangement, and you don't have, for instance, let's say I wanted that block there and that one there, and I wouldn't want to do another pink one right next to that. So I'm going to do a nice arrangement so that I'm not repeating the same colors, so that they're spaced out evenly in a nice arrangement. So go ahead and lay your blocks out so that you have this top row and this middle row and the other middle row and the bottom row. And then in between you'll have two blocks. It's very simple, but it shows you on the assembly diagram on page 13 exactly how many blocks to do, how to lay them out. The blocks on the end, you do not sew another sashing on. So go ahead and pick up these blocks that are in your border. I just pick mine up in order and go to the sewing machine, and I've got my 1.5 by 6.5 inch strips of the blue queen print, and I'm going to sew that on the side of every one of these blocks. So you'll go ahead and sew a sashing strip onto the side of all of the blocks that are in pink in your diagram. And I'm going to show you how I laid them out. So I had these in order, so I'll just place them. I know I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks in this top row. And the last one doesn't have a sashing on it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't have quite enough room. Pretend like we've got all 7 laid out there. Let me put them here so you can see. And then the last one does not have a sashing on it. Okay, and then go ahead and sew those seams together between those to create your rows. So you need 4 rows like that have the different blocks with sashings in between them. So you won't have any sashing on the end of either of those rows. Go ahead and put your 3 blocks together, 2 that have sashing and 1 that does not, that will go between the panels. And then this long row, you need 2 of those with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 blocks, 10 with sashing and 1 with not. And go ahead and put those together. So the units are already put together. And then your garden block, you'll have a sashing piece cut on the top and on the bottom of this block that is 48.5 inches, and that's all on the diagram. 48.5 inches long by 1.5 inches tall, and put that on the top and bottom of your garden blocks, and also on the top and bottom of your panel blocks once you've inserted these 3 blocks. And very simple to do. We're just going to follow this diagram and go ahead, put the units together in the center, then add your long sashings on the outside and your extra blocks that go on the top sides. And that's it. That will complete your whole quilt. You'll have your quilt top all done. I pressed my seams toward this sashing because there's a lot of different seams there in your block, and it's easiest to press toward the sashing. They don't have to meet anything, so it doesn't matter that there's extra bulk there. So they should go together very easily. And if your blocks are 6.5 inches finished, as they should be, it should come out perfectly. Now, if your blocks are a tiny bit smaller, then just take your seam allowance when you add that piece. Let me show you on this one. Take your seam allowance a little bit smaller just to compensate for that. So maybe have your blue sashing out into the seam allowance a little bit and lose that little extra that you're missing on the block as you sew in a 1/4 inch seam from the edge of the blue, but you're making your white a little bit smaller so that your finished size from sashing to sashing will be 6 inches, and it should come together beautifully. So that's all you need to do to finish this quilt. Let me know if you got yours done and how it was working out for you, and if you have any questions. Thank you so much for sewing along with me. We'll do another sew along next year. I'm already getting it planned, so I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. Bye-bye.